going to be doing today is the volume, shape, shading, and lighting. Starting with the volume, starting with the shapes. Sorry about that. Um, and the shapes are the most simplest thing. I'm just going to go ahead and hop right in. Okay, so the program that we're going to be using is Clip Studio Paint. Clip Studio Paint is better known as Manga Studio and recently has surpassed Photoshop for people who are doing things like creating artwork, creating comics, graphic novels, anything of that nature. And quite recently began to enjoy this program because they expanded their feature set to cater to animation, people who did frame by frame animation. So the program does a good job of utilizing animation layers and other types of little tools that you can really get into. In addition, essentially, if you're like a 3D artist or somebody who does 3D animation or for whatever product development or whatever the case may be, you can still you can grab your output from other types of 3D programs, such as Blender, Maya, 3D Studio Max, and kind of bring them into this program via the proprietary file formats if it's supported, and use them right alongside your artwork or to as a template for your artwork. So it's a really cool feature as this program allows you to do that through its robustness. Um, so I'm just going to open up a new file here, traditional new, and I'm going to give this a monstrous resolution, which is okay. I just love drawing on huge canvases, as you can see right here, the traditional 4K. Okay, so kind of getting started here. We're going to talk about the shapes first. Just gonna zoom in. Oh, pretty good. All right, so rough shapes. If you're just getting into drawing, you can probably draw a circle really well, or you can't. You know, prove me prove me wrong. Um, but in general, you just have to train your hands to make a circle. You know, when I first started out, it was very difficult to draw a circle. But just through perfection, just hours and hours of just hating the way that my circles looked, or having it look more like a ellipse rather than a circle, kind of made things very, you know, much easier in a hard work sort of way. Um, so traditional circle kind of looks like that, and this forms the basis for a lot of things. If you can draw a circle, you can probably draw a lot more complex thing like this bird here. I'm just gonna make this out of a circle here. Looks kind of happy. But as you can imagine, circle does one other thing for you. It kind of forms the basis for just you to kind of wrap your head around this shape, this object that's just a line that looks like a circle that separates the inside from the rest of the page. So if you see this circle here, something a little later on that'll come up with silhouetting, it allows your mind to kind of see that there's some sort of object here on the page. So you can kind of do many things along with that and create this object, which is a very important concept, but so very basic that it's easy to just overlook it. Obviously, we have our squares. Um, very simple stuff, which uh, very hardcore, so very basic that it's very easy to overlook. But going to our 3D shapes, a very easy way to draw a cube. Of course, you have your traditional square here, and you just have two diagonal lines at the very top. And of course, you have a nice little square in it, nice little cube. A little bit later on, when we hop into figure drawing, you're going to see how really amazing these basic shapes are, and you're just kind of recognizing, um, uh, just kind of utilizing them to help you kind of visualize the world around you and kind of visualize, the human body. This is a really horrible um, human torso made of just a kind of elongated square. So now we have some basic shapes under our belt, and there's other ones. You have your pyramid, uh, just like that annoying guy, pyramid scheme. Hey, if you tell a friend, um, and you have other types of complex shapes. They're really, really complex to kind of draw. Dodecahedron. Just in general, shapes that generally occur arise out of basic polygonal faces, but are outside the scope of basic shapes as we're using them here. So the next thing we want to do, definitely, uh, is shading. Shading gives rise to something else, which is volume, which we'll be heading there next. But shading is very important because if you have a pencil in hand, you can do something what's called a gradient. And gradient is basically just kind of interpolating, just kind of forming one color from another, as you would have like blue, purple, and then red or something similar. So let's kind of show how that looks. Okay, so pretty much a gradient is formed, as you can probably guess, when you have your pencil pressed down hard, and you just kind of gradually uh, get lighter with the color. Now, there's many different ways to have a gradient. Here, we just elected to have one sweeping motion and just kind of just very, very dark on one end, obviously, and then just gradually just kind of form that motion. There's just another type of way to do it. You can use cross hatching. Um, this kind of method is a little bit less, as well. Drawing on a monitor is kind of less as easy to perform. You can kind of cross and then do something similar, getting lighter as we go ahead. And okay, so we have like different types of shading and different types of ways you can add detail through shading. So you have shading. Uh, Say for instance you have this square right here, this cube, and you just want to kind of make sure that the cube has something, something else. You want to just place emphasis on the fact that it's a cube, uh, and the way that you can do that is kind of shade one end. Of course, having a cube um, by itself is just enough. Oops, crooked cube here. It's very cold here. My hands are, my hands are cold. Um, But as you can see here, the shading of one side of this cube gives rise to something else, which is volume. And volume is pretty important um, because what it does is it's able to really make you simulate a 3D surface on a 2D surface. So that's like it's you know it's something special. I'm pretty sure there are four-dimensional creatures that are like, yes, we can make a three-dimensional through some other method of shading. Maybe fog or something. It'll show up as fog in our dimension, which is pretty weird. Um, so volume is something that obviously we want to do on a 2D paper to simulate and make realistic 3D surfaces. So just hopping right back into that. Just going to erase that there. And let me see if my hotkey is still, that's good enough. Okay, so um, we have this circle, which is obviously a 2D circle. If we start to shade in, as you can imagine, start to shade in one side, we can go ahead and give it some volume there. Nice little line. Basic cell shading. And if we were to draw like, I didn't like a head or something, a person's face. It's like a just a really easy way to really give that uh, whatever it is that you're drawing. It's probably not the best way to do that. Let's go ahead and give him a realistic something right here. Nice little ears. Ears are too big. We're gonna go with that. So as you can see, this is kind of jumping up ahead. But as you can imagine, if you pick a side, uh, just like you would, you're standing under a tree, it's opposite to the lighting. You can really be able to determine where the light is, and that's also what gives something volume. So in this case, um, as you can tell, the side of his face is already shaded, and it gives the appearance of volume, just like this circle here. So that brings us straight into lighting. It's kind of crash course. I just had to get that out of the way because it's somewhat important. Um, Lighting is essentially what we're doing here with the face here and the ball. We can uh, make scenes look 10 times more realistic than they would if you just had 2D shapes there. It is actually said that a picture, like a completed picture, is really painted by the lighting. And if there's anybody that's watching this that does 3D, 3D animation or 3D modeling and animation and 3D scene building, you'll know that by the base textures, um, your scene will always look flat. There's always something that's missing. And the reason for that is light plays a humongous role in not only in perception of volume, but gives us many different types of information about a scene, especially when it's drawn or if it's in 3D or any other type of media painting. Um, and what that is it gives us a little bit of the depth. You have two eyes that gives you your depth perception, but we've also learned to determine depth in any type of environment because the shadows and the distance of the shadows from the object, or you see a nice little angle. And it also gives us the location of the lights are, where the lights are wherever you look. You can always tell what the lights are. Not only is it very bright, but you can always know that following the lights is a shadow. So here's where we're going to jump in complexity just a little bit. And we're going to talk about scene planning. So, here we are. We have a nice little room. Just a very, very basic scene room. And we have this box. We're going to say there's a box in this room. And also, we're going to do another tutorial a little bit later on perspective. But for the sake, all intents and purposes, here we just have this random box that's in our room. Now, traditionally, we have this window here, and this window does certain things for this room. As you can imagine, one of the main things is it's a nice little light source. So with shading, the way that you can tell any person looking at your art is that you would obviously shade, determining the volume of the box. That lets you know that on some level, when you first look at it, um, that the side opposite to the box is obviously the side opposite to the light. Very basic stuff, but it's a thing. If you're just getting into drawing, um, it's enough of a basic thing to be noteworthy and something to think about while you're creating your scenes. Also, light just moves in a straight line from its source. So something happens actually. It moves in a straight line. So if this window has, you know, casting light essentially into this room, you can definitely tell that from this source, from this window here, everything is going to move in a nice little straight line from that window. So in a nutshell, if we have a light source right here, the light would move out. We have that little box. I'm going to make it 2D in the interest of time. You're going to have your shadow appear here. Now, shadows are, you have your umbria and your pre-umbria, which is most likely, which is essentially the way that shadows form. But for the sake of simplicity, we're going to say that this light from this point something else happens to light. As you get farther from the source, there's something called the inverse square law. So what that is essentially the further away you get from a light, the more space, incredibly, the light is spread out across. So if you have a little square, you have your light source here, in this bright little square. If you move a little bit further from the light source, you'll be able to fit 4 squares, and such that the distance, um, it's a little bit more complex than that, but all you have to know is light actually it diminishes as it gets farther from the source. It's not that the intensity of the light changed from where it is from the source, it's just that the energy of that light, based on your distance, is spread out over a larger surface area. So to really catch that light, you'd have to be, 4 times as big, 9 times as big, 27 times, 16 times as big, and it'll continue on, in order to get the same brightness, perceive the same brightness from that light. So it's safe to say, since our eyes are so small, the light just gets dimmer. um, so we have casting shadows. Gonna make this a random shape here. And we're also going to talk about height. We're not going to go into the Pythagorean theorem, so we're just going to make this very, very straightforward. Let's see, light, light, and you're going to say ground level. I'm going to draw a box, another box, and another box. As we mentioned before, the behavior of the light is always going to be um, similar, and I pretty much drove this home. So if the light is right here, actually, we're going to have a different effect. We're going to have like a very strong upward shadow there. These are shadows. I should do something like that so they're more than obvious. So you can really go through, hours and hours. This is the shortened version, but there is obviously a longer way I can explain this. We're going to avoid doing that. Okay, so now that we've gotten over lighting, we're just going to use all those concepts um, to make something a little bit more complex, utilizing the shapes, lighting, and shading, and of course, all to add to the volume and um, how the image kind of pokes out at you. So this is going to take a little bit long while, but it's also difficult to draw and chew gum at the same time. Of course, what I'm doing over here is actually in Clip Studio Paint or Manga Studio Pro, Manga Studio. Um, you can change the size of your pencil, and of course I have conveniently hotkeyed the erase and pencil, of course for E and F on my end, so I can easily switch between the eraser and the pencil there, and just kind of manipulating the brush size here, You have your hardness. Um, Hardness is actually, uh, if you want a soft drawing here, you're actually gonna, you won't be able to see that. So you have something like this at very, very low hardness, and you have something like this at very, very high. So I'm going to be manipulating these sometimes very fast, so you're going to see the menu just pop up and go nowhere. So just letting you know what's going on. So going back, I'm going to change my pencil back here. Give that eraser. So what I'm doing here is I'm basically making a nice little robot, just using basic shapes. Obviously, this shape is more of like customized shape, not really a what's called a primitive, a square, triangle. We're gonna see if we can make. Now, one of the things I definitely want to bring up here is you can see a lot being um, simplified in essence. Um, Instead of concentrating on making very detailed shapes, sometimes when you're first starting off, just any type of image, you want to make things as simple as possible. One of the things I noticed about myself in particular is that it's very much easier to edit my work than it is to actually create new work. And I don't know why that is, but I can find something that's wrong with my work a lot faster than I can actually do it right the first time. Um, so what I've elected to do is essentially um, find the fastest way that I can get something on the paper that I can edit. And it's just like it's a nice little brain hack. um, just basically how I'm wired. If it works for you, that's perfect. Um, So, just part of that is utilizing these basic shapes to form something that you could then later on edit, and that's something that's a lot easier. As you can see here, there's a cylindrical shape being drawn here, and another one being drawn for the hand. And just kind of following along. Um, Now, so there's some magic going on for people who are complete beginners. If you've been drawing for a while, obviously this stuff is not very new. You're probably looking more towards the next couple episodes that are going to be coming out rather than this one. This one might be just a little painstaking, so I'm sorry. Um, this one is specifically for the beginning people who find things like you know creating volume very very difficult, and lighting or perspective, things like that, which are very very difficult concepts. A lot of times people draw these 2D images where it's easy to draw from the front. Um, from the front, or whoops, that's not anatomical, but or the side view. So that's the easiest thing, that it's not a bad thing. Those are often portrayed in anime, manga, and stuff like that. Um, but in real life, the best anime artists and the best manga artists and people who really, really, really stand out on their work, they're able to um, draw utilizing perspective, and that's really what gives them a very dynamic look to what they need to do. So this would be the side view, front view. I'm sorry, and this of course would be um, this will be your side view here, and you have your pectoral muscles, um, other stuff, latissimus dorsi. This is your pectoralis major. I'm sorry, this right here. Medical names for parts of the body. So this that would be more dynamic. When we go into the human body, I can definitely show you realistic forms um, of the human body that would make for a better, uh, more advanced, higher level tutorial. Um, Here we have a robot here with basic shapes, and I don't want to spend too much time on him. I just want to go ahead and hop right in and give him a nice little joint here or something like that to. Nice little double lines. He doesn't have a head. Yes, he does. Just think of a nice little Star Wars. Definitely not out of the original Star Wars. You know, he's this one is more like the kill me, kill me. This is the one that wants to die. It's like this guy is drawing me. He's drawing me not the right way. All right, so um, I think I'm gonna just kind of hurry up and finish this image here. Give him some basic shapes. He had a femur or something like that. And his chin, he had something like that. I'm gonna do another basic shape here. So there you go. This is a basic 2D image. And what I'm going to do for shading, this program actually does screen tone, so um, I'm going to grab just like a nice little screen tone off from the right side here and use that for shading. Whenever I can find one. This can take hours, maybe even days, months. Um, Alright, there it is. Okay, so that's a nice one. Nice little raster layer. Anytime you see raster on a computer, just know that it's more like pixel. If you see vector, it's more like there's some sort of magic equation that makes it so that you can draw extremely neatly. It's really something you'll see the difference. All right, so here we are. We have our shapes, and let's go ahead and create a new layer here. And I'm going to there we go. Okay, so I'm just going to be painting with this screen tone, and we're going to say that the light somewhere here. It's behind this poor little creature. Um, gonna kind of signify that he still wants to die. I drew him wrong. You know, he can't move. Uh, and we're just gonna paint the shade in there. So as you can see, this drawing isn't done too well, and that's to illustrate a pretty important point. As you can see, even though the drawing wasn't done very well, once you introduce the shading to give it volume, your brain really starts to do something magic. It starts to just kind of fill in uh, it's what it likes to think reality is um, on this drawing. So sometimes even you'll find a drawing that has less lines than this, and yet it looks more detailed through the use of shading than say someone who utilized a large amount of lines and a huge amount of detail using a pencil. Um, you know, you can call it like you can say that it's like white spacing, where you can see that there's space there, and because there's a blank space there, your brain just kind of fills in what's supposed to be there, or what is most logically supposed to be there, which is, how it does that is beyond me, but definitely a very important thing when you're looking at artwork. So just continuing to add that shading there. Again, shading is to the opposite of your light source, so just kind of imagine how it is in reality. Obviously, if you have a candle, you won't get any light on the other side unless your candle is right next to a mirror, obviously, then you probably will get some very, very light, complex lighting on your scene. If you don't have a mirror, then, just follow everything you've believed since you were like 5 years old. If you are 5 years old, then yeah, this is a perfect beginning point. Um, okay, so as you can see, with minimal lighting, or rather minimal line work, we've been able to add volume into the scene through the use of shading. Um, and as you can see, it really, really adds to the depth perception, to what is actually going on um, in the scene. And essentially, that does something else, which is you can really relay visual information to your viewers while it sounds complex, but when you get used to it, it's like, oh yeah, I just want them to know that the light is over here, or say your character has like a magic power or something like that, and you want it to, you really want the person to know that um, whatever's coming from their hand is really glowing. It's really it's really epic. Something epic is going on, and he has this like little nice little power. You can convey that um, through having a light source. In this case, again, I'm going to turn the hardness down on eraser, kind of pump up the size a little bit, and around his eyes, just kind of have uh, nice little glowing spots. So you can kind of tell just like this that his eyes kind of glow with minimal effort because of that. So it's not the best of drawings to get started with, but it is one with basic shapes, and it does allow you to see the value of just getting lots of practice with shapes. Um, Using shading to define your volume, and using lighting in a scene to convey different types of information. All right, I'll see you guys next time. And if you want any information regarding the complex side of, say, game design or character creation, you can wait a little bit more for more character creations. This is the first of many tutorials to be coming. And any other question regarding creative or projects that you might be doing, you can go to rashidallis.com, and it's actually showing up right here. Yep. And ask your questions in the forums. Um, there will also be articles and tutorials for either programmer types, for people who want like game design tutorials like DirectX, OpenGL, things like that. Heavy stuff, heavy stuff. I'm just my forewarning. And that's about it. All right. See you guys next time, and thanks for watching.